TESOL presents Free Friday webinars, and you can find information from AmericanTESOL.com. We offer these webinars every Friday for free at about this time. We do go by American New York time, so I know there's going to be definitely a time change soon in March. So definitely be aware of that. But you can always follow us on our social media accounts to see when the webinars are. We're at AM TESOL. We're also at TESOL, TESOL, and also at ESL webinars on Twitter, or you can find us on our Facebook page as well. Okay, so Christina says it's actually next week. So next week, remember, the time changes, so we spring forward. So that means that it's probably going to be an hour earlier, just to note that. So that'll be good for some of you in other countries around the world. Today, we're going to talk about research in general, digital research, but we're going to focus on mobile apps that do some really great things. I call it the ABCs of research because research has changed so much. If you're a teacher of any age, this is a great webinar, but especially if you teach teenagers, higher education, even adolescents, and also English for academic purposes, because this definitely will help with those language learners. It also helps with CLIL. So if you teach content, language, integrated learning, teach any kind of science subject, anything like that, you'll really appreciate this as well. So let's do a brief overview of research. And I found this definition and wanted to highlight different parts from Wikipedia that I was looking for. And that's a popular tool that our students use for research, but that's not the only research tool or app that's out there. But let's go to the definition of research. What I really like about the definition is it says systematic investigation. And so the apps I'm going to share with you today, which are all free, they do have free, and on different devices. So they're on the web, they're also on Chromebooks, they're also on Android, they're also available on iOS devices like Apple or iPad. So if you have any kind of device, you can find one of these apps that's going to fit for you and your students. So it's systematic investigation. These apps help you do that. Now, our students, they have their mobile devices, so it's great to be able to get it to where they can take out their phones and they're able to go on their device and they're able to constantly research a topic because it's right there on their pocket, all the information. So I think that's really important. Proving new ideas. A lot of us haven't gotten to that stage with our learners. So I'm hoping that showing you these tools that you'll be able to get your students to solve new or existing problems or think about solving new or existing problems, to prove new ideas, for them to have their own theories, developing them, and then to search for the knowledge to be able to make those great leaps. And so a lot of us have had our students search for knowledge, do maybe a systematic investigation of a topic, like maybe they researched animals and they looked up a lot of different research for that particular animal. Or maybe they were looking at the life cycle of a butterfly or something. And then, of course, harnessing of curiosity. The great thing is that research is no longer boring. It's very engaging with a mobile device. And I want you to think right now about Pinterest. How many of you have actually used Pinterest? Or is there anyone here who has not heard of Pinterest or seen Pinterest? So that's kind of what digital research looks like. And I mentioned Pinterest because Pinterest is very visual, and it does add all of a lot of these different digital research lingo. So for example, curating. Curating, if you think about the word curation, you probably think of a museum or an art gallery. And when you think of an art gallery, you get to put all of these paintings together any way you want to put them inside a gallery to express a theme. So the theme might be, for example, it might be the Renaissance era, Well, now you can do that with your research. If you think of Pinterest, then what you can do is you can take you bookmark a website, for example, and it shows up as a really pretty, beautiful image, and you can choose the image. You can do things. You can have a board where you can make the images, resize them so they all look really nice, and some people are really good about this. You can put a video next to it, and if you click the video, then it plays. So now research, when you bookmark it, it's no longer in just a boring text list. It's actually can look very visual and very beautiful, which is great for language learners. We also have where you can aggregate, or aggregation. Aggregation is when you have just a list of different bookmarks. They don't necessarily all go together, but it's something. Let's say you're going through Twitter, you're going through your Pinterest, you're going through Facebook, and you're just bookmarking all these things. So that's how why you have aggregation. Annotation is when you can go on a website, you can highlight it, you can take notes, you can write down what that research really means to you. So if you're looking up a character and you find a special note about that character in a novel, then you can write it down. Oh, this character represents the anti-hero, or this character in this scene says this quote. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this. Um, and of course, you're probably familiar with bookmarking, searching, categorizing, and tagging. Tagging is when you can put keywords to help you remember. When you do search, you can search these different apps and find that research. And that's so exciting because in the past, you used to have sticky notes. Well, at least I did. And I used to put them in a book, or I used to, have different note cards. And in those note cards, it was hard to categorize them. I no longer have those note cards. They all fell. Or I no longer have, for example, those sticky notes, because, or the books, I always, I really don't like when I have to highlight and mark my books, because I love books. So I want to read them again, and that can be really difficult to be able to, highlight a book and everything, and then go back and it's all written all over. So it's really great what you can do online, because your books that you do have, you can preserve them and you can keep reading and enjoying them, or share them with people, and that's really amazing. So I want to share with you the higher level things that you can do with students, because you probably have had students search. You probably have had them maybe bookmark and put things together, or maybe your students already do that. But so I'm sharing this definition here, and it comes from this article from Idealog. You can search it. The author's name is Chatsky, but he defines aggregation as digital aggregation, and that's important to note, as pulling together things which are not connected. So that's when you're just bookmarking, you're collecting bookmarks. You're on Twitter, you clicked it. When you are on Facebook, you find something, and it's not necessarily that any of this has a particular topic. It's just you browse every day. And like me, I find a meme I think is funny. I find a 5-minute recipe I think is really great that I want to use later. Sometimes I'm on Pinterest and I see an infographic and I think, wow, I want to bookmark that. On Twitter, I'm always finding blog posts. So they match all my interests, and I just put them together in a site. Me, I use Digo. Digo is one of those sites, and I use Pearltrees the most, but I use the other apps as well. The other important part of this webinar, and also digital research, is curation. So curation is, think of the museum again and the gallery. And so Chotkin says that it's careful selection and pruning of the aggregates. So what you're doing is you're actually taking what you bookmark throughout the week, the day, the month, and what you're doing is you're putting it in a site, and you're making a board, maybe like a Pinterest board, and you're making it visual. Or maybe you're putting it in a magazine, an online magazine where people can browse through it and they can get information from you. Or maybe you're putting it in in a Pearltree where you can have it later so you can go back and you can look at it. Or maybe you're doing it on a live binders, exactly like Kim K says, which I'm going to show you all of these, and then you can present it in actual presentation. So there's so much you can do. So your students, they probably think research is pretty boring. I love research. I'm a big research nerd. I've always loved writing research papers, 30, 40 pages. I love going into libraries, but students aren't necessarily like that today. They want to find things quickly and fast. So a lot of times they'll just go to, for example, Wikipedia, or they'll just do a Google search. And as we know, because we had the previous fake news webinar, that's a serious problem because they're not getting accurate information. So how do they research more effectively, and how do they save time, make it quick and easy and fast for them, and also enjoyable and also brain friendly? Well, because digital research is so visual now, our brain, it's actually better for our brains than going through the books and doing note cards and things like that. And the reason why is because you can continue to revisit that research, but also it puts it in a visual your students are taking their research and they're categorizing it, they're curating it, they're putting it together visually the way that their brain wants to consume it. And so they can make connections, and because it's very personal and engaging, and it's visual, then yeah, exactly like Christina says, it's actually a lot of fun. And like Peggy says, research sounds like a big formal word, but when they do it on Pinterest, or when they do it on like a Pearltree or live binders, it's not, it doesn't seem so much like research. In a way, it seems like they get to put some personality into it. They get to make it their own. And so that's really important. So you can take a screenshot, or of course, I shared the slides here, and of course, where you can find the bookmarks and information here. So these are curation web tools and apps, curation and aggregation web tools and apps. And they're also places you can bookmark. Like I said, all of them have a free version. And all of them, and not only do they have a free version, but a lot of them, most of them, have a mobile app. And then they're also on multiple devices. So I'm going to talk about a few that are specifically apps. The one in here that is not an app to note is Storify. They used to have an app, but then it no longer exists. So they might put one in the future, but it is a great tool to use on the web. It's specifically, I really like it for Twitter chats, or to do something with a Twitter hashtag. It makes it it's really great when you have a hashtag and you want to gather all the resources from it. Then I would suggest Storify for that. So I'm going to show you what the other ones look like, and what I want you, it's a lot of information, but I want you to do is think of what kind of device you have, what kind of devices your students have, and which of these would be most appropriate for your students' age level, for their age, and also their level, and what they're doing, what kind of research are they doing. Okay, because there is a research app for almost any age group, any level. I will note that if you are teaching very young learners, like if you're teaching children and adolescents, EduClipper and Padlet are great places to start, and I think are really great for that. And I think they're the most educational and friendly, and also life binders. So those are the three that I would recommend when it comes to younger students. So I'm going to show you my favorite. Of course, you're probably familiar if you come to these webinars, because I use it for pretty much every single webinar to bookmark. So I've even have Pearltrees for this particular webinar. Why do I love Pearltrees? It's available on the web. It's available on iOS. It's available on Android. The reason why I love Pearltrees is because it's the best curation tool out there, in my opinion. It's easy to, it looks a little, okay, so it is like Pinterest. It's not like a board, but you do have the little icons. Not as pretty as Pinterest, but you can actually move those icons, and fast and easy. The great thing about Pearltrees is it also, when you click on the icon, when you click on the little icons, so the icon's visual like this. You can put them in sections. So if you go look at the Pearltrees for this one, then you're going to go ahead and see where there's a section on research, and so you can see where the sections are. But the great thing is when you click on one, it blows it up on your page to the full one, and you can read the article, and it puts it in very friendly digital text. So it's really easy for students to read. The other thing is when that particular website expires, the archive doesn't. Even in the free version, because I have the free version, the archive of that first page, at least, that still stays even if that website changes. Because sometimes, especially bookmarking blogs, you'll find some great information and then you realize that that particular blogger has gotten their own web address, and then you can't find that information again. Or some sites go offline, they can't support the website, and then you lose that important information. Newspapers online, so many times they'll take it off and then you have to pay subscription later on. So if you want to keep that information, I think it's really, really great. You can also do a search on Pearltrees and find so many other people's Pearltrees, and you can take some of their bookmarks and add it to your own. I just think Pearltrees is really, really fantastic. The other one that I've used before, and I haven't tried the app, but now it has an iOS and Android app. It's also available on the web. Is Symbaloo, and Symbaloo has a great way to have icons, and what I use it for is a digital playground for my students. So, for example, when I give my students assignments, I've done it on Moodle, I've done it on Canva, I've done it on wiki pages, on different Google communities. I mean, on different types of learning management systems and stuff. And so what you can do with that is, let's say you give your students an assignment. Like, for example, I give my students, my college students, they have to create, they research an article, and then they have to create a comic that shows 3 facts they learned from that article. Okay. And some of my students, they can use, there's a bunch of comic tools that I like. I like make believes. I like I like Comics Head. I mean, there's so many great. So what I do is make a Symbaloo of all the ones that they can use that are free, and I let them choose. So that's what I think Symbaloo is really great for. As far as curating, it's okay to curate. It takes a little bit longer. It's not as quick as Pearltrees. Pearltrees grabs all the information and does it for you. Symbaloo, you have to click and then it takes you there. But also it doesn't give you that information within Symbaloo. So it actually takes you to the actual website. When you want to change that particular icon, that's difficult as well. I've often have to go back and do it 2 or 3 times. I have to click that little box. So for me, it's not as user-friendly and as quick as Pearltree, but it is, I've used it and it is good, and some teachers just love that kind of presentation. Pocket. So Pocket's a different type of research app. What Pocket does is it's for the mobile device, and I've worked in a lot of countries where there's not a lot of Wi-Fi or internet available. So for example, I was teaching in Venezuela, and sometimes the electricity would go out. There's no electricity, then your students, they don't necessarily want to use their data. But if they have Pocket, the great thing is when you bookmark something on Pocket, it becomes available offline. So you don't even need an internet connection. It's on your iOS, Android device, and it's on the web as well. So that's the great thing about Pocket, because when you do have the internet, you can bookmark all this research. And then let's say your students are going on the bus, or maybe they're going on the subway, and they have no internet connection and they want something to do on their phone. Well, they have all of this. You can encourage them and you can say, you have it offline, so that's a great time to do your reading. When you're waiting for the bus, when you're on the bus, or when you're in the subway, you don't have to worry that you're all the way in the subway and you don't get any Wi-Fi or anything like that, because it's offline. So I think that's really great. Live Binder. So that's the one Kim Case was talking about here. And it is really great. I think it's wonderful. Students love it. It's also great for young learners. It has great apps as well. The great thing about Live Binders is it puts it into a format where it's like a 3-ring binder almost. You have different tabs, and you can change those tabs quite easily. So it is good for curation, but it's also good to do a presentation because your students can actually make it look like a website. So they can make it look like a web presentation. It'll also let you just bookmark, and then it just automatically has that website within that. The things about live binders I don't necessarily like as much as I like with other tools is if you bookmark a video, a Facebook, or anything like that, you have to um, you have to click on the actual site. It'll only leave an icon and it won't actually put the video on there. I think that Pinterest still will play videos within its format, and I think EduClipper does as well. But I love live binders. Live binders is also not as user friendly to learn quite quickly for students. That's the most difficult I've had during my training. A lot of the students, for example, okay, you can directly, but is it just your own YouTube or Vimeo videos? Or because when I do it, it won't show them. But the great thing about live binders, any video, okay, good. So that's good to know. So Peggy George says you can add Vimeo and YouTube videos and they will play within live binders. So that's good. You just have to add them as, okay, okay, good. So now you can add the videos. But the great thing about, the difficult part about live binders I find in training is if your students aren't so familiar with HTML and stuff, then they may not, sometimes the font gets a little funky and, or it won't be all together and things like that. If they're trying to create a digital presentation, if they're trying, for example, I love live binders for digital portfolios. I think they're awesome to have a portfolio page and things like that. But I think it's good to know a little bit of HTML so you can fix it. And Kim K says they've added new exciting features, so it's probably a lot easier to use than I've used in the past. Another great one for education and students is Learnist. So Learnist is where you get to explore different curated lists that are visual from experts around the world. Sometimes these experts ask you to pay for it, like $10, but not all the lists are like that. They have a lot that are free, and they're really great research ones because there's a lot of people who are on there who are trying to make such great lists so they can get a great following. So eventually they can charge. Then they'll be able to. They make these great lists that are really great. So where it says here astral places to visit on Earth, this person, it's not just from one person, it's from just one source. It actually has several sources within that list. So I like it because instead of going to a blog post where you see 10 things and it's all the same source, you don't know where the research came from or anything like that. These lists actually come from, and you can comb through and see where they did their research. So I think that's great. ISummary. Okay, so those of you who feel like you have information overload, and I know our students feel like that as well, you're going to love the ISummary app. The only bad thing about iSummary is it's only available on iOS. But one of the great things that it does is it has an algorithm. So all your bookmarks on iSummary, and they can come from Instagram, they can come from Facebook, they can come from Twitter. But all of these, when you take those bookmarks, Summarist puts the algorithm to where it takes the most important information from that article or from that bookmark, and then it presents it to you in these little summaries so that way you can quickly go through the research and then you can decide, hey, I really like this article here. I think it's worth me looking up some more. But a lot of times when we're doing research and we're online and we say, okay, this looks good, or here, I need to bookmark this, and this. But then we have to go back and we're like, oh my gosh, I have to read through all of these journal articles, or I have to read through all of these blog posts. But what if I don't think that it's that important? So with iSummary, you only read the little part that's important and then you can decide. And it's in such a visual way that you can really just scan through it really quick, and your students will like that, especially if they have to do in-depth research that has a lot of heavy text, because they're doing research on a mobile device or even on a computer, it's difficult to go through all the PDFs and stuff, and it just gives you burnout. So iSummary is really good for this. If you are big fans of the TV show The Office, the American version, not the UK, then you might be familiar with a famous actor there, which is BJ Novak. So BJ Novak actually writes a lot of great books about social and digital research and in social networking and media. And so he came up and developed his own app. It's called List, Li.st. It's available for iOS and Android, and it's where you can favorite things. You can have these lists of things you like. It's a and the great thing is it builds a social community around it. It's not as good as the other ones are as far as education is involved, but if you have adult learners, then I think it's really good. It could be a fun way to get some buy-in. Just like Pinterest, I don't think is the best researching tool, but it gets a lot of buy-in. So I use it with my college students and my teacher candidates and teacher learners as well. Flipboard. So Flipboard, what that does is it puts your bookmarks into a digital magazine. It's not so easy to curate. So when I've used Flipboard, for example, if I have an article and then I want to change it to the top, that's really difficult to do. But it does put it in a format that people will actually read. So a lot of teachers like to use Flipboard for example, if they have student blogs and all the posts were there, and the posts you just have all these blog posts, the most recent ones from your students, and you want another class to look at it, then put it in the Flipboard, because then that class will look through it like an e-zine, like a digital magazine. If you're doing, for example, a blog carnival, you can have a Flipboard of it, and then it has all of those together, and people can go and they can look at it and read everything. It puts in a nice magazine format that's online, and it's easy to browse. Scoop It has little icons and boxes. I believe with the free version, you get up to 10 different Scoop It themes or topics that you can do. So for example, I have, if you want to put it under one theme, I think you have up to 10 that are free. A lot of people use this on Twitter. I've seen this a lot of times. It does give you a preview of the article, so it's really good. A way to look at things and have a summary and a preview as well, so it's not information overload. It is good for educational purposes as well, because it doesn't have anything that's advertisements and things like that I've seen. So I think it's a great way to do some research. Diigo is one of my favorite tools. It gives you annotation, highlighting, so many different features, and so that's why I really love Diigo. It's not as visual or nice looking as the other ones, but it has all the important stuff, like so many things. If you really want to do some intense research, then Diigo's the tool to use. It's available on the web, iOS, Android, on pretty much any device. Evernote is another really great one. You can do annotation. You can actually draw. If you have, for example, it's available in pretty much any device on your computer. You can even download a software that's free. I mean, so it has a lot of free versions. But the great thing is you can actually, if you have one of those stylus pens, you can use your mobile and you can actually draw. But I think it's really, really great. So definitely Evernote is a really good option for annotation as well. So Diigo and Evernote, if you want to get into real research, then those are the apps to use. And Educlipper is like the Pinterest of education. It is safe for students. It's really great, especially if you have young learners, because there's very few researching tools that are great for young learners. It also works sort of like a learning management system. You can create these boards and put them as assignments, and then you can grade as well. You can give digital badges. So Adam Bello has made this to where it's really great for educators. A lot of different schools will allow it through the filters and things like that. So I think Educlipper is really great. He has an app that has video that's for the iPad. And then it also has where you can record audio as well. So that's a really great feature in it, especially if you're doing digital portfolios. And then this is the way that I've used Pinterest with my students. You can actually go, you can pinterest.com/storyandtap, or under Shell Terrell, you'll find the Pinterest boards my students did. Their digital portfolios are one. But the thing I liked about Pinterest when I did it with my students is that it's collaborative. So I added all their emails, and so we got to curate things together. And so I thought that was really awesome. This is what their individual boards look like. So that was the collaborative boards. This is an example of what they did. So they were able to reflect on each of the bookmarks, which I think is really great. And then on top of that, other students were able to pin theirs on their boards, and they were actually able to leave comments. So here, let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger so you can see how they made comments. So this is Maria Jose's board, but Alta Gracia actually made a comment here. And of course, there's me. I could add a comment as well. So she's commenting. And so I like that because now this research is collaborative and everybody is learning from each other. So I think that's really, really incredible. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up soon because the baby's getting kind of restless here. But Padlet's really great for young learners as well. It's on the web. It has, I think, an Android app now too. And Padlet, if you just want to do one project where your students are collaborative, do collaborative research, Padlet's a great way to do this as well. It can be very visual. There's different templates to work with. You can make it private to where your students have passwords so they can access that board. If you're worried about, others seeing it, it's not so public. I think when you do, so there were so many apps and different types of ways that you can do research, and I know that it can be kind of overwhelming. But I think that the best thing when you do research with your students is try to pick which ones you think will be the easiest for them to kind of jump in line with. Also, what's going to be good for their age group. Think about the research you're doing already, and then walk them through the stages of research. I really like this site. This is actually where you can click, and Peggy George has been really great and shared the link in the chat box. And what I like is if you take a screenshot, it looks like an infographic, and it shows students quickly the different stages of great research, digital research. So it's planning whatever it is, the project and everything. If you give them a paper, whether it's a project, a digital poster, maybe it's a presentation they're going to do, whatever it is, a speech or something, then the plan. What is the plan? Then on to searching for information. Then it's taking notes. And then it also shows them, how can you, and then you can talk about this. So I don't necessarily go through their little icons, but we talk about it. Where are the best sites to search for information? They're going to say Google, they're going to say Wikipedia, and you can give them some other different resources out there. You can show them how they can take notes on their mobile device, using a stylus pen, they can take pictures, do observations, they can annotate, they can highlight on a website. So there's so many apps that do great things that have them take notes online in an engaging way. How they're going to use the information, how they'll report it, and how they evaluate it. So you can find so much of this information and much, much more in some other slides that talk about research more in depth. But since we're running out of time, you can share with you where you can find this. You can find it on my Pearltrees, the particular apps. And of course, you can go to shellyterrell.com/research, and then you can access the other slides and information that I have there. And if you want to catch the past 5 years of different webinars that we've done, you can go to youtube.com/user/TESOL, and you can find hundreds of different 30-minute, an hour recordings of these webinars. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see